almost every congregation I know wants to attract, connect with, and involve families with young children. Turns out right now in this season of my life, I'm part of that target demographic. My wife and I are blessed to have and be raising 2 young boys. It's been a challenge during these months of pandemic, of not being able to go as many places and do as many things with other people. It's been hard not to go as often to church. But I realized something surprising. We've actually appreciated the opportunities to worship remotely, whether through Zoom or live stream video. Sometimes those experiences have been more completely worshipful for us than being there in person. Now, don't get me wrong, my wife and I are both ordained ministers. We love the church. We're raising our children in the church. Church folks love them, and they love church folks. When I tell people, though, that it's been easier, more worshipful to worship remotely, sometimes, well, they smile and nod their heads and say, well, of course, it takes an awful lot to get kids up and fed and dressed and out the door and to worship on time, or anywhere close to on time. And that is true. It is time-consuming and stressful for the 4 of us to go anywhere, particularly early in the morning. But my learning about how more worshipful it can be to worship using technology goes beyond that. You see, because our challenges don't end when we get the boys in the car and start driving. No, then we've got to get them out of the car. And we just never know, well, what they're going to do. And so whenever we're around worship, we're anxious. We don't want our boys to be too noisy, too rough. We don't want them to run too fast. We don't want them to, well, sometimes hit each other or hit others. We don't want them to get emotional. We don't want them to be in the way. And look, we love church folk, and church folk overwhelmingly love our boys. They embrace them just as they are. And even then, we're still stressed. We're still anxious and keeping an eye on how they behave because we don't want them to interrupt worship for anybody else. And so we spend the whole of the time, well, with one eye on them, and I suppose one eye on worship and everything else. Turns out when we're at home worshiping, we don't have that anxiety. We found that we could set up the computer in one room and have the boys come in and out. They were even able to more fully participate themselves in worship. If they heard us singing, frequently they'd come in and join us. Sometimes when they'd hear us get quiet and we'd be praying, they'd get quiet and pray too. And as often as, well, I cherish the times. I can't say it happened every Sunday. It did not, but I cherish the times when they realized we were taking communion and they joined us. Look, no context for worship is completely perfect until we're in the heavenly realm, surrounding God and perfectly praising God with our full attention. But I've been surprised. I've been surprised by how much more I can worship and my wife can worship some Sunday mornings using technology. And I wonder what lessons we as ministers and congregations in ministry can take from our experience. What ways can we reach out to better connect families with young children that we so desperately want to participate in our communities of faith? How can we use technology, yes, as part of that means of connection? How can we change some of the things we do in person so they are less anxious whenever they arrive, even if it's a few minutes into the service? And how can we find ways to not just shuffle the young kids off to the nursery down the hall, but to give them opportunities to worship alongside their parents and grow up, really grow up, in a worshiping community of faith. Sometimes lessons come with new questions, but I thought I would share this one with you, knowing how much you love God and you're striving to reach out in Jesus' name to others in your community, including families with young children.